You are listening to Squid and the Ultimate Leafs Fan.
Hello, Canada and hockey fans of the United States and Newfoundland, and an extra big hello to Canadian servicemen overseas.
Well, Happy New Year, everybody, and welcome to the Squid and Ultimate Leaf Fan Show. I'm Mike Wilson. Joining me as usual is my good old buddy, Ricky Squid Vaive. Squid, how we doing and how you keeping over the holidays?
I'm doing okay, Mike. It's kind of shutdown time, so a lot more TV and so on. But you know what? It is what it is. Like I've said many times, and we just have to get through it, live through it, and you know, hopefully at some point, which I'm sure there will be, I'm not sure when, everything will get back to somewhat normal. So we just have to hang in and endure it.
Well, that's what we're doing. And I guess we would like to start today's show off with, and folks, this is the third of our best ofs, and you're not going to be disappointed with this lineup of characters we got coming on today. And boy, that's probably the best way to describe it. I think leading off with JR. So make sure you have a listen to this. But we want to send best wishes and good luck to our good friend, Steve Ludzik, who's in for a liver transplant. For those who following us and who aren't aware, he did come into complications with the blockage and had to have some heart work done. So it looks like, now, Rick, you got a bit of an update this morning that it looks like could be 3 weeks as opposed to originally thinking it was 3 months before this would be delayed again.
Yeah, he had the stent put in, obviously, and originally they were told 3 months he would have to wait for the transplant, but now it looks like it's going to be probably 3 weeks, a month anyway, maybe, and maybe even as little as 3 weeks. So that's good to hear, because having to wait 3 months. Now, the good part is they found this when they went in to obviously test him to get ready for surgery for the liver transplant. So it's good that they found that. It kind of is awful that he has to wait a month, but you know what? Let's hope that everything works out okay and he gets through this month good and we can get it done.
Well, he's a pretty resilient guy and a strong guy with a very positive and upbeat attitude, which every time we talk to him, he is. And I'm sure if anybody's going to pull this through, he definitely will with flying colors. So all the best to Ludsey moving forward. I guess I would just, we'd like to mention that, I've moved myself south for the next little while. We are basically quarantined to the condo every day here in Florida, but we don't go anywhere. I go to the balcony, so I brought a dozen books with me to read. And I got to tell you, folks, I just thought we'd switch it up a little bit here. I'm going to catch Squid a little bit off guard in this one, but one book I've read before, I think I've read it twice, I'm going through it again, is Game Misconduct, the Russ Conway brilliant story on Al Nicholson and the corruption of hockey. Man, oh man, Squid, this guy, he is so low, he could play handball against a curb. And I'm telling you, the stuff that this guy did and cheated people on, I just, for the life of me, I don't know how he could even look at himself in the morning. I got to tell you what, one story in particular is to show you. And the thing about it is the book goes into such great detail about every dollar and where it went and all the companies involved. And I won't bore you with all that detail, but just to give you an idea, he had a place, his office is 37 Maitland in Toronto. He owned the building. It was 3,500 square feet. He had a law practice, he had his agency business, and he had his legal business he did for hockey on top of all of that, and a consulting business, pardon me. So there's 3 businesses in there. He leased out 1,200 square feet to Hockey Canada, and he leased out 1,200 square feet to the NHL Players Association. Okay, so that left him probably around 1,000 feet for his 3 other businesses. But meanwhile, he was running Hockey Canada, and he was in charge of the NHL Players Association. So he owned the building. So here's the players, their leader, they're paying rent to the landlord who's their leader and supposed to be representing them. And you're one of them, by the way, at the time. And secondly, my favorite part of this whole story, and shows you how really low you can go, he had 4 parking spots in the building. Now, he leased 6 to Hockey Canada. With 1 they didn't have to pay for, and that was $500 a month. They were paying over $500 a month. 1 went to Al Nicholson because he was in charge of Hockey Canada, like at that time. for running international hockey. And the NHL Players Association was charged for 4. And one of the employees there was saying that there was such confusion. There was no room to park into the cars. They're parking them in back alleys, breaking all these valuations, and people running out just changing cars all the time at 4 parking spots. And the best part of the story is they're paying $160 a month for a spot. The garage across the street, they're $120 to park indoors. So, I mean, this is how low this guy went to squeeze every possible dollar and cheat that he could out of people. And just as it's astounding. So, folks, I mean, Rick, you had some experiences. I mean, I'm sure you had him as the agent originally, and I think you told me one time he didn't even know who you were at one time.
No, he was my first agent, and Bill Waters, of course, and Rick Curran worked for him. And when he would come around every year to speak to everybody about the NHLPA, what was going on and everything in all the cities. So he came to Vancouver, and of course I was the 5th overall pick that year by Vancouver. So he would take his clients out for dinner at a specific nice restaurant. Anyway, so I get there, and I'm in this, they got a private room with a big long table, and I'm in there, and there's a couple of guys there that work for him. I'm not sure who they were, but one of them comes up to me and says, "Who are you?" I was like, "What do you mean? Who am I?" He goes, "Well, Al doesn't know your name." I just kind of went, "Really?" I was a 5th pick overall. I've been his client for 2 years now, and he doesn't know who the hell I am. But anyway, and then of course, fast forward to, I can't remember if it was after the first 50-goal season or the third one or the other. He called, I think it was the first actually, and he called one day and the phone rang, and it was him. He said, "Al Eagleson here, Rick. I know I can make you a lot more money in this city," and so on and so forth, on and on and on. And of course I said, I have no doubt you probably could, Al, but I'm with Bill now because he left Al, him and Rick Curran. And I said, I'm pretty happy where I am. And so that was the end of that.
Well, now, when you were at the Leafs, now you went to some of those meetings, I think, didn't you? The talk is like anybody would open their mouth, he would just bully them or beat them down. So guys are just absolutely terrified to ask a question. Was that always true?
Yeah. In fact, I was on the executive in, I believe it was 86 or 87. We were negotiating a new CBA, and we were down in at the Breakers where he had his condo and everything else. And anyway, we were meeting, but the funny thing was, I see in recent years when there's been negotiations and you see Fair or whoever the head of the PA is, and they're going in to negotiate, and there's like 8 or 10 players going in. I'm thinking, well, that's kind of weird. Like, we never did that. It was just Al. he would always go negotiate on his own. And I remember we were sitting there, and we wanted 3 things. We wanted free agency from 32 to 28. We wanted salary disclosure, and we wanted to get rid of recallable waivers.
Yeah.
Anyway, he comes in with this big 400 game thing that you were going to get 250,000 cash at age 55, and if you played 400 games, which I had already played, and all I had to do was play 1 more game to qualify. And so anyway, first question somebody asked him was, how are we going to get cash? Like, what about the government? They're going to want their cut. And I believe it was either me or Steve Casper that asked the question. And the first thing he did was he just attacked you like you were stupid, like you didn't know what the hell you were talking about and everything else, because he wanted to belittle you so badly that you wouldn't stand up in front of the crowd again and ask another question. And that was kind of the way he did things. He attacked you, made you feel so bad that you weren't going to get up and ask any more questions. So that was Al Eagleson to a T.
Well, and just to further that story you touched on with the $250,000 payment for 400 games, being in the financial business, I know a little bit about this, very little, about pension fund surplus. And usually that money, it can be distributed to shareholders or who's ever involved. And in this point in time, it was the players' money. But what he was doing, it was going back to the owners, and they were using that surplus to actually fund that part of it. And I know it's a sticky point with you guys, so I don't want to get any too farther into this, but just goes to show you how deep this book goes. So guys, I'll leave it at this here. If you get a chance, you really want to read about scandalous issues. Never mind, he makes Bernie Madoff look like Mother Teresa. Okay, so let me tell you,
I can't even imagine what's in there. Then I'll have to get it and read it.
You've got to trust me on this one. You've got to read this one. You won't put it down. The stuff that just goes, and it just anyway. There's so much in there. It is definitely worth the entertainment. Look it up. Russ Conway did an absolute phenomenal job on it. I think it's my third time reading it. I find something every time. So anyway. Speaking of more positive things now, I'm telling you can laugh a little bit about now, but he should have spent more time in jail. But Team Canada, the juniors, as we're recording this, they're playing Finland this afternoon. So hopefully all things go accordingly. They win, and we're moving into the second round. What do you think of the format so far? I mean, some of these teams are just getting annihilated. Should there maybe be a restructuring of some of the talent level?
I don't know if that's absolutely necessary, Mike. I think during this tournament in particular, I mean, you've had teams that have had when they played Germany, they had 8 of the regulars up, so with the COVID problem. So, I mean, I think this is kind of an outlier. I mean, I think every other year, there are a couple of teams at the bottom that end up getting regulated anyway, that are not very good. And so you have, 8 teams or 10 teams, I think, in it. And, the bottom 2 are usually pretty weak and they get clobbered by the best teams. So, I mean, maybe there's a way of eliminating 2 teams. I'm not sure because that brings it to 6. That's not very many. So I think you leave it status quo and hope that we don't have another year like this year where teams are losing 7, 8 players because they test positive for COVID. So, when they played Germany, I know that was the case, and they clobbered them 16-2, when normally that would not happen.
No, you're right. And I think, in fairness, I think we got to give it another year before it just seems to be the big topic this day about the imbalance of the talent level. And I think as we're speaking here and you're listening to this, they should be playing either Saturday or Sunday. I don't know when they'll be playing, depending on what happens today. But the hockey gets much better from here on in, and you'll start seeing, I think the level of play will increase dramatically. So we're looking forward to that. January 13th, the Leafs open against Montreal.
Canadian division.
The Canadian division, we asked for it, got it. And we're looking
I can't wait. I mean, I'm really excited to see just the Canadian teams playing against one another. And, because everybody always, there's always a thing in Canada with who's the best Canadian team and all this, every year it's always brought up who's going to be the best Canadian. Well, we're going to find out who's going to be the best Canadian team because that's all they're playing all year, 56 games. And I can't wait because I think it's going to be great.
I'm all set here too. Myself, I'm waiting. Got the NHL Center Ice package all ready to go, and we're all set up January 13th, and I'll be right front. Won't be missing a minute. So we're ready to go. Well, I think, Squid, it's time maybe to pass it off to our guests. We want to thank them all for joining in this part of the year. We got off to a great start, I think, with all these guys. Gave us some great insights, some great stories. We're really excited about getting started in the new year. We've got a number of guests lined up that I think you guys out there, listeners, are going to really enjoy. But maybe we want to take a minute here and have a listen to what some of these guys said and remind you of some of the stories that were out there. Okay, so without further ado, here's some of our reviews from the past couple of months. Our guest today has a very impressive resume. 20-year career, 500-goal scorer. Much like you, part of the 50-goal club a couple times. Almost an average of a point a game over 1,363 games. Represented his country in international play, the USA, of course, I'm talking about. And one of the lovable, colorful characters in the game of hockey. We welcome Jeremy Roenick.
I don't know if you've heard my story about Gordie Howe dumping snow on my head when I was 7 years old. So it was in Hartford. We were practicing, and we had a game, and I rushed out of the locker room after our game because the Hartford Whalers were coming on to do their pregame skate, their morning skate. It was at our local arena, and remember, all the kids are hanging over the glass and they're looking and they're watching. Gordie Howe, Mark Howe, Marty Howe. Were on the same team at that time. This is like 1977, 1978, and Gordie Howe came by me and picked up some snow and dumped it on my head. And I was like, he came by and winked at me. And it was like the coolest thing that had ever happened to me. It's Gordie Howe just dumped snow on my head. He didn't dump snow on anybody else's head. He dumped it on mine. And, it was one of the coolest things. And I think that's where I really found out that athletes can really make a difference and really give kids something to work for. You can, idolize these guys and give people stories and just give them a nice warm feeling in their hearts. And I tried to do that when I became pro, but I moved all the way up and down the Eastern Seaboard a lot. I went to Connecticut a couple times, New York. I moved to Virginia when I was 10 years old and actually played in Virginia for, believe it or not, and then flew up to Newark on weekends to play for the New Jersey Rockets. And the New Jersey Rockets was one of the best teams in the country. And we won 2 national championships. But my mom would take me out of school at about 1:30 every Friday, take me to the airport, and I'd jump on a People's Express out of Dulles Airport, fly up to Newark. I'd get picked up by one of my teammates' moms, and we'd go right to practice or right to a game. And I did that every weekend for 80, 85 some odd games, and then national championships. And it was really crazy. It was a nutty way to be on the best teams. But, then up to high school, went at the Thayer Academy at Tony Amonte, as you know, Squid. He was my line mate at Thayer Academy. We won 2 New England championships, had an amazing team. And, to have a line mate like Tony Amonte in high school and then be able to play in the pros, like in Chicago with Tony and Philly with Tony, was a very rare thing. But I call Tony he's my soulmate of line mates. It was crazy because I was 14 years old. So it was that time to possibly maybe go play juniors. I was playing I was a freshman. I think I was a freshman in high school, and I stayed behind a couple years in school because of my lack of schooling that hockey took away when traveling. It wasn't because of my grades. It wasn't because how dumb or smart I was, even though that wasn't there either. But so I was 14 playing high school hockey, and I was a freshman, and I get a call from Charlie Henry. And Charlie Henry was the GM of Hull, who was Wayne Gretzky's junior team. And I knew a lot about the juniors because I would go up to Canada and watch. I would go up to Montreal really and watch the Verdun Canadians play. Verdun was one of the better Quebec teams, Quebec major junior teams up there. So my dad and I would drive on weekends just to go watch junior hockey players play, and I thought it was awesome. So I knew what it was all about. And so Charlie Henry goes, Wayne Gretzky's coming to Boston and wants to invite you to a game and breakfast and talk about maybe going to play for us. What are you're shitting me? What are you talking about? Wayne Gretzky wants to come see me. I'm literally 14 years old. I'm 120 pounds. I'm this little pipsqueak of a guy. Granted, I was good, but Wayne Gretzky's going to come to Boston. He wants to see me. I said, sure. So, my dad and mom, we went down to Boston. We went to the hotel. Wayne Gretzky came down, had breakfast with us, took me into Boston Garden, into the locker room, and pretty much showed me what it was like, being a pro. And I couldn't believe it. Like, it was hard for me to speak what was going on, seeing Paul Coffey and Mark Messier and Anderson and all these guys that I watch on television, and brought me in after the game also, and was telling me all about Hull and how it helped your career and playing in the best players and the best talent. And I just didn't know what to say. The only problem was my mom was totally against it. So I was like, oh yeah, I'll go play for Wayne Gretzky's team. Wayne Gretzky, how can you say no to Wayne Gretzky? And my mom said, I don't care who Wayne Gretzky is. You're not leaving home. And I was like, oh, okay. So I ended up staying at Thayer Academy because my mom, she didn't want me to leave and go away from her. She was too much of a homebody for her kid. And so really cool. It was really cool to have Wayne Gretzky looking at me at the time. And it was fun. I told this story with him. So 1991. So this is only 7 years after was my first All-Star game in Chicago. And who sat right next to me in the locker room, my first All-Star game in Chicago, obviously my home city, was Wayne Gretzky. And I said, Wayne, I said, how weird is this, right? 7 years ago, you're asking me to go play for your junior team. And now I'm sitting right next to you in an All-Star game. How about that, big boy? And he's like, it's amazing. It was a fun story.
And one of your favorites, I'd like you to touch on, was Wayne Van Dorp.
Yeah, Swoop. We call him Big Swoop. Yeah. You want to talk about a guy who, thank goodness he played in the National Hockey League, because he definitely wasn't going to be a teacher. That's for sure. One of my he's one of my favorite teammates for a lot of reasons, because he was one of those guys. He's like, he would come into the locker room like, hey guys, what's going on? Who are we playing today? And we're like, hey Swoop, what's going on? You ready? Yeah, I'm ready. Right? Big fighter, right out of Vancouver, and couldn't score a goal if you hit the ocean if you put him on the beach, with luck. But he could fight, and he was tough. Too. And he was big. This big old head of his, right? He's so intimidating, but he's a big teddy bear, right? He's the nicest guy. I'm still friends with him today, and I think he laughs when I describe what Swoop was like. I remember, and this is perfect vintage Wayne Van Dorp. We're going to the airport for a road trip, and he's riding in the back seat. Mike Hudson and I are in the front seat, and we pass by this clunker of a van. I mean, it's falling apart. It says it's rust all over the sides. It's an old looks like one of those bands that was going to Woodstock, back in the 60s, right? And on the side it says with a phone number, and Swoop picks up the phone and calls this person and says, I want to buy your van, man. And the guy, and I'm like, you're really going to buy that van? He's like, sure. He goes, how much you want for the van? The guy says like $1,500, and Swoop goes, I'll give you $500 for the van. Right? And the guy took it. He bought this van and literally redid the inside and put panels inside and redid the inside himself. I think he lived in the van for a little bit because he loved that van so much. But it was, for a professional athlete to buy this shit clunker of a van off the highway going to the airport for a game, was one of my favorite moments. And he loved that van. And it seriously, it stunk, and it was old, and it was rusty. And he thought this thing was the greatest thing in the world. And that's why I love Wayne Van Dorp, because he just appreciated having anything, appreciated playing in the league, appreciated his friends. And I'm going to tell you one more story about Swoop. So we're skating in Montreal. We're going around, how in warm-ups, you go out one side, you each go to the net, and then you're kind of going this way. Well, Wayne wasn't watching where he was going. He was too busy in Montreal looking up in the stands as we're skating around. And I'm skating, and we come to the middle, and I look up, and here's Swoop coming at me. Now, he outweighed me by about 150 pounds, and I didn't know what to do, and I had nothing else to do. So the only thing I could do is drop my shoulder really quick and lay a shoulder right into his chest. And I hit Wayne Van Dorp so hard in the warm-ups in Montreal, right? And he went down in the end. He almost got knocked out. And I remember we came into the locker room after warm-ups, and he goes, nice hit, kid. And I'm like, that's just Swoop, right? He just didn't care. He goes, nice hit, kid. And, he's a wonderful man.
I was at this game, and you're playing the Leafs in the playoffs.
Yep.
I was doing Leafs TV at the time,
Yeah,
by
you
the
were.
way, too. The pre
And-
and the post game shows.
And the puck goes in your end. You back to get it. And Tucker, I think he started at center ice and built steam up and ran you and hit you behind the net.
Yeah.
The hit was probably one of the hardest hits I've ever seen. You're on the receiving end, so you can verify that. The crowd actually stopped, and the players actually stopped and went silent because they thought, what just happened?
Oh.
You looked like a drunken sailor walking off the
Yep.
ice. You walked off the ice, but I remember thinking to myself, okay, if this guy comes back, we're in big trouble. And you remember you scored the overtime goal, and you didn't do the finger.
Yeah.
You skated the whole lap of the ice and let the fans know who scored the goal.
Yeah. I remember that hit. I was coming around the net, and he caught me. He caught me kind of like the way that I was explaining. I like to catch people. He cut me off on the side of the net, and he hit me so hard. I literally went black, went blind. It couldn't, like, I sat there, I couldn't see anything. I felt like, Droopy the dog. I was like,
Yeah.
it was, again, one of the hardest I've ever been hit. But it was crazy because the biggest hit happened later.
When you scored the goal.
Yes.
When I
that's
scored
right.
the goal.
Kapanen.
That's right.
Sammy Kapanen, little Sammy Kapanen.
Yeah.
He hit Sammy Kapanen so hard. Darcy Tucker is a tough mother, and he's a guy that how he's going to play. I love Darcy too. He's a friend of mine. I love him. He hit Sammy Kapanen so hard against the boards.
Yeah.
And Sammy did the duck. He didn't know where he was, right? By the way, players today, if they got hit like Sammy Kapanen, they'd be done for 3 months. 3 months they'd be out of the game if they got hit like Sammy Kapanen got hit in this game. Sammy Kapanen, the warrior, true heart and soul guy he is, he stood up. He started trying to get to the bench. The fans are going crazy. I mean, that place was as loud as I've ever heard it at the Air Canada. It was the Air Canada Center at the time, I think.
Yeah.
And the place is going nuts. We're in overtime, and Sammy Kapanen is literally falling, and he has the duck legs, and he doesn't know where to go. And I remember Keith Primo stepped off the bench and literally, gave him the hook to bring him into the bench. He couldn't find where the bench was. So he gets off. I jump on, the puck goes down the ice, and I think it was Brian Leach or Sundin that turned the puck over inside the blue line. Tony Amonte and I turn on the 2-on-1 the other way, and I roof one over Eddie Belfour's shoulder. I think it was the best shot I've ever had. It's my favorite goal I've ever scored. I always loved playing Toronto because playing in Toronto to me was the ultimate. Playing in front of people that knew the game, playing in a historical city. I think I scored more points against Toronto than any other team. But that goal went over Eddie Belfour's shoulder. And, I played with Eddie. He was one of the best goaltenders of all time. But, I saw that puck go in, and the celebration, the place went from pandemonium to complete silence.
Silence, yeah.
Complete silence.
I believe
that was a picture.
That was double or triple overtime too.
It was double overtime. Yeah, it was double
Yeah.
overtime. It was double overtime. And there's a picture of me celebrating, right?
Yes.
I'm running and everybody coming to me. And there's this picture. And it's a great picture because the look on my face celebrating, but that's not why it was a good picture. Because in the background, if you look at the fans in the picture, there are people that are like with their head back. There's people with their hands on their face. But there's one person in the picture that's going like this, giving me the finger and swearing at me. And I'm like, that's just symbolic to me how Toronto fans are, right? And they were so passionate. And I knocked them out of the playoffs.
Yes, you did.
And they didn't make the playoffs for 9 years after that goal.
What was your mental state going through that whole period? And again, going from an original 6 team, a team like Chicago, you're going to the desert.
Yeah, that's not surprising because Bob Pulford was the cheapest son of a bitch you ever managed in the NHL. I went through that too.
Yep. You know who it was? It was Bob Pulford and Bob Murray. at the time too. Because because Murph kind of came on board. So it was the two of them that kind of shipped me out of Chicago. But I remember this because this when people say if you could ever change something in your career, what would it be? And I think I would have changed the way that I treated that whole negotiation with the Blackhawks and with Mr. Wirtz, and some of the things that I said, some of the things that he said. And, that's why I realized that they're the owners of the team. I mean, they own the team for a reason. It's their team. If they have a certain way they want to run the team, then so be it. I was a brash, cocky, arrogant, loudmouth kid, coming off of 500, 50 goal seasons, 100-point seasons, and seeing Eric Lindros make $3 million without ever playing a day in the league. At 96, I thought, $4 million, that's all I wanted at the time. I wanted a $4 million contract. This is 1996, and the Blackhawks didn't want to pay it to me. And because of our squabbles, they shipped me out of Chicago. And I would have gone back, and if I can go back, I definitely would have respected the process more. I think the dialogue would have been different, and I probably would have been the Hawk the rest of my career. But to go from Chicago to the desert and play in the desert was, you can't get two polar opposite kind of situations. But I love playing in the desert, and I had a great 5 years in the desert, and still live there today. So it wasn't a bad trade in terms of how my life turned out, but it didn't turn out great in my career, because my career after that kind of slowly started going the wrong way. And I think it was because that was the first time in 1996 that I ever experienced as a person, somebody or a team not wanting me on their team. And it was kind of a strange feeling. So I'm picking up the phone, and right before I pick up the phone, Wayne Gretzky calls. It's like, "Hey, JR, what you doing?" I'm like, "Yeah, nothing." Just, not telling him what's going on. He goes, "I want you to come play in Phoenix. They love you here in Phoenix. Come play for us in Phoenix." And I'm like, "Oh no, here, I'm just getting ready to tell Daryl Sutter that I want to go play for him in Calgary." And Wayne Gretzky now again, hence 20 years, 20 years almost to the year, when he tried to get me to go play for Hull, and I said no. I can't say no to him the second time. So I said, you can't say no to Wayne Gretzky in 2005. So I went and played in Phoenix, and I remember I was in one of the best shapes that I ever was. But Gretz didn't give me, I think he brought me there maybe to sell tickets, not play hockey, because he put me on the fourth line and didn't play me all that much. And it was a kind of a tough year. But I remember battling Gretz, just because I'd walk into the locker room, and, you see the board, and they had the names on the boards, of what line you're on. And I was always on the side, or I was on the bottom. And, if I had a line, I was excited, but if I was on the side of the board, I was pissed off, and I made sure that I showed it. So there was a practice going. I remember this one time, walk in, they have the practice lines written on the board, and I was on the side, meaning I didn't have a line. So what do you do in practice? You sub in, right? So you take somebody's spot and do a line rush and all that stuff. And I remember we're doing line rushes, doing 3-on-2s and 3-on-3s, and line rushes back and forth. And I'm standing against the boards, and I'm just standing on the boards with my arm on the boards, and I'm staring at Gretz. And Gretz is standing at the red line watching, and I'm just standing there, and I'm looking at him with my arm like this, and I just keep staring at Gretz. And Gretz goes, "Are you going to take a rush? Are you going to take a line rush?" And I said, "Are you going to give me a line?" And he just shook his head, and he goes, "I don't know." And I looked at him and goes, "Well, I guess I don't know if I'm going to take a line rush then. I'll just sit here until you give me a line." And he just turned away from me, and he shook his head, and he's like, "Whatever, JR."
in Chicago, you're a very popular player, so you got a chance to, I think, hang with a couple of famous people in that city.
Little basketball guys?
Yeah, one of those basketball guys. And there's a great story that I've heard that with Michael Jordan, you guys playing golf one day, and I agree with you. I think you said you've made him legendary by this story about playing golf and drinking beer, and then him going out and scoring a bunch of points one night. And maybe you want to tell us that story.
Yeah, he's. You guys, I assume you saw the documentary.
Yeah.
Yes.
With
yes.
Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
That's exactly how Michael Jordan was. It's exactly how he is. It's exactly how he lived his life. Exactly how he wanted everybody. He wanted everybody at their best. I've never seen a competitor or an athlete so focused, so determined, so just so ready to and prepared to play his sport. I mean, Michael was the ultimate competitor. He made everybody better. He dragged people into the fights, into the games, and he hated to lose. Boy, did he hate to lose. And it goes back to the golf round. It's a Sunday night, and I get a call. It's in April, right before the playoffs are getting ready to start. And the weather's actually pretty nice at the time. And Jordan says, "Meet me at the golf course, Sunset Ridge, 7:00. We're teeing up." So I get there. We play 18 holes. I beat him for a few grand, and it's 10:00, 10:30 in the morning, and I think we're done. We don't have a game that night. We have the day off. The Bulls are playing Cleveland that night. So I'm thinking, play 18. He's going to go back and take a nap, get ready for the game. I'm getting ready to leave. He goes, "Let's go play 18 more." I'm like, "You can play 18 more. You want to play 36? He's like, "Yeah, I got to get my money back." So he orders a bunch of beers, and we go back out and play another 18. We polished off probably a case between the two of us. And I beat him for a couple more grand. And after, it was about 3:00 now, 3:00 in the afternoon, and he's getting in the car. He has a car picking him up to take him to the game down the Chicago Stadium. He's going right from the golf course to the game. And I'm like, "Mike, I'm making sure I'm calling my bookie. I'm putting a bet on Cleveland tonight. No way you guys winning tonight." He goes, "Tell you what, I'll bet you what I lost you today. We win by 20 and I scored it. No question." I'm like, "You're on." He dunks 52 and they win by like 26. And I knew, because I remember after watching the game, I said he could have cared less about beating Cleveland. He could have cared less about that game, because I think that was the year they had one of the best teams of all time. They knew they were going to win. The only reason he cared about winning that game is so he could get the money back that he lost to me on the golf course. But nobody can play 36 holes and take care of themselves the way that he did that day and go out and put up a game like that, but Michael Jordan.
I know one guy that could do it. Boreas Solomon.
Oh yeah. Yeah. This is fun. I actually just told this story yesterday at this rally that I'm in. It was kind of funny because I said there's only one time I played drunk in the National Hockey League. I played absolutely hammered. In 1994, I believe it was 1994, 92. So, you know, we had strikes, and lockouts and strikes. Well, at this time of the year, it was right before playoffs. There's 2 games left before playoffs. So we were talking with NHLPA that the best time to strike was right before playoffs, because as you guys know, that the salaries stop once playoffs, and that's when the teams make their money, is during the playoffs, right? Because they don't have to pay the players. So our best bargaining power was to strike right at the end of the season, right before playoffs. So we're going to play in the playoffs. So I remember the last game of the season, we're in Detroit, and we're striking. We're definitely striking. So we're getting ready to play Detroit, and nobody's going to go to the rink. We're going to go to the professional ballet over in Windsor. So a bunch of us get in the car, get in the cabs, and we go through the tunnel at like 12 o'clock in the afternoon. And we're going to go have lunch at the ballet in Windsor. And we're sitting at the club, and we're drinking, and we're enjoying the ballet. And it's about 4 o'clock, and it's like, we still haven't gotten the call. We haven't gotten the call. Like, we're waiting for the call to say, okay, boys, we're striking. No call. Finally, Chelly calls I think it was, I can't forget who it was at the time, was the head of the PA, but said, what's going on? It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Now it's 4:30, 5 o'clock. Are we striking or what? When are you going to announce the strike? And he goes, oh, we're not striking today. We're striking tomorrow. What? We're not striking today. And we're hammered, all of us. I remember us running out of the club, getting into the cab, flying through the Windsor Tunnel back into Detroit, right to the arena. Well, we walked, like 8 of us walk into the arena, Joe Louis Arena. We stunk to high heaven. And Keenan is sitting there, and he's looking at us, and he's just shaking his head because he sees that we're just like lit up. Smell, our suits are all over the place. You can smell beer all over us. And I remember sitting in the locker room going, I'm gonna die. There's no way. I'm gonna get traded. This is gonna be awful. And this is where I really learned that playing with guilt is sometimes the best way to play, because I played one of my best games I ever played, because if we didn't win and I didn't play well, that we were going to get it from Mike, something fierce. But the thing is we tied 2-2 that game, and I scored a goal and had an assist. And I remember walking onto the bench, still reeking of sweat and alcohol. And Mike Keenan goes, good game, kid. Good game. And I was like, whew, whew. I was like, wow. I said, I slipped by that one.
Squid, our guest today, is one of those types that needs no formal introduction, and simply stating his first name says it all. The first overall pick in the 1985 draft by the Leafs, after a stellar career in the WHL, converted from D to a forward, made the all-rookie team after setting a Leaf goal-scoring record of 34 goals, which has been broken since by some kid that I forgot his name. But it was a hard-nosed play that resonated fans with this guy, and I'm referring to Leaf great Wendel Clark.
In order to make the team, I thought I was getting cut. I got called in. You remember that 7 a.m. phone call that they usually phone you? You're either going on the plane to Europe or you're going the plane home. And I got the 7 a.m. phone call, and I thought I was going to get cut. And Terry Simpson and Sherry Basson said, we'd like you to play on the team, but you're going to be playing some forward, some defense, because we want to take 8 defensemen to World Juniors. So myself and John Miner, who was playing on the Regina Pats, both played forward and defense. And luck we have it, Dave Gertz, who was one of the other defensemen from Prince Albert, he broke his leg in an exhibition game in Finland. So that's why I ended up playing some forward and some D. And so I played 3 games forward and 3 games defense in the World Juniors. And must have been the Leafs. They just scouted the 3 games I played forward in World Juniors because I ended up being a forward. But
that wouldn't surprise me.
A great experience and a little story. Didn't know till later, till we were doing something with the World Juniors, Gary Roberts and I, because the year I made the World Juniors, Team Canada is the hardest thing to play on. It's probably the first time a lot of us, we don't know if you're going to make the team or not. There's that many good players playing for any Canadian team. Mm-hmm. And so Gary Roberts and I were doing a talk, and I was saying how you have to be a team guy. It doesn't matter where they put you, and explained how I went from defense to forward. Well, lo and behold, Gary Roberts was one of the guys that was cut my year at World Juniors. So he got cut because I got moved to forward. So Gary was looking at me as I was telling the kids, and he goes, "You mean to tell me I got cut because they moved the defenseman to forward?" And that year, Todd Gill got cut, Joe Noondike got cut, Gary Roberts got cut, and Patrick Waugh got cut from that World Junior team. Craig Billington beat out Patrick Waugh on the World Junior teams. You never know, later, Patrick Waugh, one of the best ever. Gary Roberts, Nui, Hall of Famer. You never know that Team Canada. That's the toughest thing. I know, Rick, you played in some of the Team Canada stuff, and that's some of the hardest because everybody's good.
Here you're an 18-year-old kid coming from Kelvington, Saskatchewan, coming to this draft. You're the first pick taken. You're sitting at the table with the owner, and Bob Stellick tells a story that during that time, I don't know if you remember this or not, Ballard's trying to hire him away from Central Scouting, and you're really uncomfortable because they start talking about salary and bonus and all this kind of stuff. And you wanted to leave, and Howard said, "Just sit there, it's fine." And they're negotiating right in front of you, and you just kept trying to turn your head. So what was going through your mind when all this was all going on?
No, well, like you say, it's all really a blur. You're a kid, you're getting drafted. It's the least nervous probably at the time of the draft because I ended up going first. I didn't have to wait. But then you're nervous. You're meeting all the people. Ricky Vaive. Ricky was there at the draft. That's the first time I met Rick. He had black hair, not so much gray then when I first met Rick. But and then
well, you had hair. You had hair.
And I had hair then. But really, just sitting at the table and really just everything is a blur, right? Right with that whole draft thing because it's all happening in front of you and even probably more when Rick got taken and everything, but you do everything on your own. There's not agents and groups and handlers and everybody telling you what's going on. You're really going there as an 18-year-old kid. I know my interviews, I went dropped off in a cab the day before to do an interview with the Leafs, and you're going in the back door off church into the hot stove. So first time in around the building, and that's the door you go, and you can't really, this is a door into the Maple Leaf Garden that you don't realize you're going into the hot stove and meeting the whole group of Dan Maloney and John Brophy and Jerry McNamara and the whole works there for the day before meeting.
Now, Wendel, during one of your negotiations, your dad, Les, apparently hit it off with Harold quite well right off the bat. And there is a story that he actually gave him a satellite dish so he could watch the games back on the farm. Is that true?
Yeah, isn't that it? A little difference in the money today. I got a $5,000 satellite dish, those great big dishes.
Yeah.
And he said, so your parents could watch the game. And lo and behold, my first tax receipt, I got the tax bill. So I ended up paying for half the dish anyway. I got the tax bill for the dish in about 6 months later. The mom and dad and Harold got along very well. Harold got along with a lot of the parents if he traveled out west a lot. I know that's when he'd run into Russ's mom, and then my mom and dad would either be Winnipeg, Calgary, Edmonton. They do those games, and he loves sitting in the stands or eating breakfast in the morning with the parents and just giving his 2 cents on the game or what's going on in the country, or he'd be asking the parents what's going on out west here with the politics and all that. So he loved talking all the time.
You played for, I think, around 6 or 7, because 6 coaches I've counted anyway, if my number's right. But and you got Ballard at the helm. Now, some of these coaches like Maloney, Burnsy, and Brof, the characters. And Uncle Hal running the show. I remember Boris Salming telling us one time, he was on the show a while ago, and he said, driving to the rink every day, you're just going in and you're walking, what's it going to be today? Like, what could be going on in this circus today? Did you ever get those thoughts, like, especially with all those characters around you? Maybe speak to that.
Yeah, no, we do a lot of events now, and I know I was doing a lot with Paul Coffey, I think in the last few years, and Paul says, I just want to hear your guys' Toronto stories. We were winning the cup, but you guys have way better stories of what's going on in the game. And, we'd be coming down to the rink on a game day, and all of a sudden you're locked out of the medical room because the trainers, the doctors are working on Harold in the medical room, and he fell in the hot tub off that board that he was sitting on, and there'd be a panic going on. And you guys as fans don't know what's going on in the dressing room. This is during game time. All this is happening in the dressing room. And then we got to go out and play a game, and your owner's drowning in the hot tub. And it's a lot of, at the time you think is, I'm a rookie, so it's, well, I guess that's the way it is. And and walking in, Ricky and Boreas Salming, this is like they've seen this already 5, 6, 7 years. They know what's going on, and so it was a lot of fun. Like I said, the dressing room part is what makes it, and I think you really find out about a lot of your teammates. It isn't winning is easy because everybody gets along, everything's going good. When things are tough and you're not winning, and we didn't always have great regular seasons, but still made the playoffs. We had a pretty good group of guys that didn't point fingers, and they just went out and played. And a lot of times, there was fingers pointing at you from the outside, but that dressing room stayed pretty good in Toronto. And that's when you find about how strong a lot of the good character players that you had, that players that went on that did well after they left Toronto, like Rick went on to Chicago and Buffalo and kept putting stats up. Stevie Thomas went on, had a great career. Big Daddy went on and played a lot of years and came back again in '92 there. And Dave Ellett went on, and Craig Muni went on, played in cups in Edmonton that didn't really play much in Toronto. Like, we had some really good players that you could see were good because they went on to other teams and did well for a lot of years.
Who was one of those guys that surprised you, was tougher than you would have thought he was to play against when he came into the league and went through it a couple of times? Or a couple guys?
I don't know if anybody surprised you. You're pretty much ready for everybody. And the players all know the players. When we still talk to the fans now, the fans are surprised, and the players go, no, we always knew he was pretty good. It's just people aren't thinking of him that way, or he's not covered as much because he's not playing in a big market. But I remember we were playing in a game once, and it might have been in Minnesota, and I hadn't, you're going through and who can play this way and who can play. I'm on the bench. I think I was asking, might have been Rick or Lehman or somebody, and I'm going, Brian McClellan, I've heard he's pretty tough, but I don't know. And all of a sudden he gets in a fight right in front of me with Big Daddy, and Brian McClellan could throw, who's a big lefty, and I go, okay, now he's tough. Yeah. But Brian was a guy that didn't want to do it, and it's not like, but he knew what he was doing. Like, he could play it. It was like one of the guys, just don't wake him up, because it's not that he wanted to do it, but he did know what he was doing as far as fighting.
Squid, how about
it's funny you bring that up, because it was in Minnesota as well, where Gary Nilan was a rookie, and Al McAdam was on Minnesota North Stars, played at the old Met Center there, and of course I know Al from PEI, and he was a farm boy in PEI, and he was pretty darn tough for a guy that wasn't extremely big, and Gary kept giving it to him all night and calling him an old man. And Gary, I said, you better be careful. I said, he's pretty tough. Yeah, he's old. And sure enough, he just kept it up. And then they dropped the gloves. McAdam hit him about 6 times. There was blood everywhere. And came to the bench. I looked at Gary, and Gary looked at me, and he said, don't say it. And I said, no, I won't.
Now, the other one is, Wendel, like the family, you touched on your family connections, Joey Kocher and Barry Melrose. Now, there was word at one time, and I'll give you a chance to defend yourself here, that they would always like to have Kocher on the ice with you when you played the Red Wings, because they think you might ease up a little bit and not go quite as hard in your cousin. But I would suggest that's not your character.
No, they pretty much played the same. That happened in '87. They put Joey on playing, and but I wasn't fighting Probert in the playoffs then either. But Joey could play hockey. He proved it winning. I think he's won 4 Stanley Cups or 3 Stanley Cups playing and coaching. But we played hard, but it wasn't. We weren't the Sutter family, so because we come from the same town, we weren't going to be fighting on each other. And I wouldn't be intimidating Joey in any form because he was as good or better than anybody at it at what he did. So. It's just one of those things. We all came from Kelvington, the Melrose, the Kochers, the Clarks. We're all related through marriage. In a small town, we're all touching somewhere along the ways. But no, it was just a great rivalry. My first time in Detroit. A little story about Joey. Yep. Joey invited me out for dinner before the game. I guess we played there Friday, so Thursday we go in, and Joey invites me out for dinner, and his roommate at the time, he didn't tell me, and I didn't know anything about it, was Bob Probert. So that night, I'm eating with Bob Probert, who ended up fighting about 8 times the rest of my career. But it's just one of those things, the people you meet, and it's one of the greatest things about our game of hockey. No matter how we all played, and we got to do a lot of charity and alumni stuff post regular season. It's great seeing all the characters on the different teams, and we all have the same things in common. You may have not got along on the ice then, but we're thick as thieves in alumni stuff because we all live the same life.
Our guest today is considered one of the good guys in the game. Played 16 years as a pro, won a Stanley Cup, moved into broadcasting, and now serves as the executive director of the NHL Alumni Association. Glen Healy, take us through playing hockey out there and starting. How did you get stuck in goal? Were you the smallest guy in the street or something, or the youngest guy?
No, well, Pickering is the home of an 8-reactor nuclear power plant, right? So leave Toronto and it's east of you smell it and south of you step in it. And then you found it. Here we go. When I started, it was my dad came from Scotland after World War II. And all of the people in our church league, their kids were playing hockey. And so my dad immediately thought, well, then we've got to play as well. And so my first year, they used to have, and this really dates me, this wouldn't date Rick, but they had the buzzer system. So you were on for 2 minutes, and then the buzzer would go off, and you would go off. And then that buzzer would go off, and you go back on. So I played that entire first year, get on the ice, buzzer would go off, I would go to change, and by the time I got to the bench, because I couldn't skate, I'm back on. I've never left the ice. So I'm the only guy in the Holy Redeemer Hockey Association that played every minute of every game all year long because I never got to the bench. But I spent the first year never touching the puck, and my dad was a genius scout. He said, well, if he can't go get the puck, why don't you let the puck come to him and make him a goalie? And that was where the legacy began.
Pretty significant hockey hotbeds in Toronto and Michigan. You moved to LA and you're playing there. So talk about the experience playing there. And part two of that question, then all of a sudden, you know I'm going to go with this, August 9th, 1988, the hockey world turns upside down when this guy number 99 shows up in town. So the difference is going between before and after.
I didn't realize we traded for Wolf Paymont. Did we get Wolf?
You got him.
Okay.
You got him for 30 nickels.
Yeah. The first year in LA, we wore the yellow pants and the yellow sweaters, and we had Culver City Ice Arena, which Rick would remember really well. I mean, at one point it got so bad we didn't even have lines on the ice at Culver City. I would take the net and put it where I thought it would be, and if they scored on me stick side, I just moved the net. Right now, hey, there we go. I got that problem fixed. And so, but we were a team that were full of witty goon talkers. Like we could beat anybody up. And I remember my first game in training camp, we finished the game in Duncan, BC against Vancouver with 3 players on each bench. And college guys thinking, this is the NHL? This is what I signed up for? Okay. And then we did get 99, and that year training camp was in Victoria, British Columbia. And I sat beside Wayne through that training camp. And I spent the entire training camp not picking his brain, not seeing what Grant Fuhr was like, not understanding what it was like to win championships, but basically telling all of the media to please get off my equipment. You're standing on my goal pads. You're standing on my skate. Would you please give me some room? And so it was a unique experience. We had more members of the press at our training camp than the Stanley Cup final the year before. And Wayne, one player, simply took us to one of the best teams in hockey. And not only built that franchise up from what would have been just a mediocre team to a dynasty, to Stanley Cup champs, to opening hockey all across the South, from Anaheim, from Tampa to Florida, to San Jose, you name it. I mean, it just opened the doors for all of us to have an ability to go from 16 teams to 21 teams and now to 32 teams. And if Wayne had stayed in Edmonton, I don't think we would have seen that Southern growth. So one player made for a lot of players getting jobs, a lot of families getting fed at the table every night. And so I can't say enough good about him. And I remember one of the first days of the year, Robbie Fatour called me in the office and said, he was the coach, said, you know what your job is this year? And I'm thinking, okay, backup, starter, what would it be? He said, make sure you stop Wayne Gretzky in practice, because if you don't, you're out of here in a hurry. So if I ever tried in practice, Ricky, maybe not against you, but when it came to 99, you're looking at George Vezina in the net come practice time.
Like Gretzky opened up hockey on the west coast of hockey in the United States. You end up with the Islanders to open things up on the east side, maybe to help there a little bit. And so you were part of something special with the Islanders for a couple of years. Talk to us about that time.
Well, I didn't really open anything up. I mean, they had all the barn doors open with a dynasty that Bill Torrey and Al Arbor had created. Those two gentlemen, from general manager to coach, were together for 25 years. Bill would draft the players, and Al would be responsible to develop them. And at some point, if Al couldn't, the player was traded. But they created a culture that was enormous. Al was the best coach I ever played for, was a father figure to all of us, taught us some great life lessons. His wife taught our wives great life lessons. She was an ambassador for our wives, teach them what it was like to be a wife in the NHL. It was just a great family situation for all of us. We had a young team. We had 4 young defensemen. We played against Washington in the first round of a playoff series, beat them. Then we went up against the Dragon, the Pittsburgh Penguins, who were 2-time Stanley Cup champs, and they had everything from Yager to, I forgot Lemieux. Yeah, Lemieux, Francis. They
wasn't bad.
Yeah, not a bad team. I think they finished the year with 16 straight wins, no shootout wins, no ties, 16 wins. And we played them, and Al Arbor just sat us in the room. We were going up against Pittsburgh, and we were all like a bunch of sheep, just, we don't have a chance. We're booking our travel for vacations. And he just said, hey, to Pat Flatley, can you tie one shift against Mario Lemieux? And of course, Flats, of course I can tie a shift. And then Ray Ferraro, yes, I can. And Claude Loisel, all the way down the list. Great, first period's done. Now let's go to the second period. And he did it again. And they said, guys, if we can just tie a shift with Lemieux, not win it, we get to game 7 in overtime, all we have to do is win one shift. Okay, seems like we can put that into a parcel and accomplish that. And sure enough, game 7, overtime, David Volek, we won one shift. And I thought, this guy is a genius. He called the series before we even started. But that was a young team that was put together after the dynasty. And we had some of the best mentors that a hockey player or an ambassador or a person on this planet could ever have in Bill and Al. They were just genuinely great people.
Well, speaking of handling the cup, you guys, now that must have been quite a party, because this is New York. This isn't some small city that wins a cup and has, 100,000 people shopping. I mean, this is New York City, so everything is over the top. So some of the parties must have been pretty wild. And I got to add this one, Heels. 1995, they started giving players a cup for the day. Now, is that a coincidence because of what you guys did, or anything you guys were doing with the cup that had them do that, or because it all of a sudden coincidentally just started the next year?
Yeah, I wish, if we watched that parade in New Jersey when they went around the parking lot at Byrne Arena, that would have been so exciting. Very exciting. Go around the parking lot, my gosh, must have been 20,000 fans or 15,000. You can sense the cynicism. Yeah, everything was done and overdone in New York. The parade was overdone. The team provided limos for players. No one was to drive. The party, the Russians had it at Brighton Beach, which was something like I've never seen in my life before. And we had the cup that summer, and everyone got to take it to where they wanted to take it to. One of the players, who I won't name, but, when you lift the cup, you tend to lift it by the top.
Yeah.
You're really not supposed to, and the top came off. Okay, you've got a bunch of people coming over, and the cup is in 2 pieces. So you're just going to hand them, here, just take a drink out of the glass, okay? No, 2 pieces.
Gorilla glue.
No, they actually used solder, Ricky. They went one step further, except it was lead solder. So for anyone that doesn't know, the cup is silver, not lead. So they covered up about 15 names. So it didn't look good on us. And each of us had a day, and we enjoyed it fully. Some of the guys had won multiple cups, so maybe it wasn't that big. I had it in Pickering. I took it to the Legion. I took it to the hospital. I took it to Sick Kids Hospital. And we had a big shindig in my area, and people still remember it. But after that year, the NHL said, okay, I'm watching this Glen Healy and Nick Kiprio serve drinks at MTV off the bottom of the cup. Probably not a good thing. I'm watching Nick Kiprio and Glen Healy take it to McSorley's, and within 3.5 minutes, two guys who really didn't play lost the cup, and it disappeared in New York, to the point we had to get hundreds of police officers to find it. So that next year, that's the year they had security go with the cup everywhere it went for every party. So for Phil Pritchard and Mr. North, those guys, I got you a job for 26 straight years, and you've been to every party. So at some point, you can thank me in your acceptance speeches at the Hall of Fame. But after that, you get the cup, you've got security. And it was the New York Rangers that wrecked it for everybody. So way to go, team, and I'll take that any day.
Now, a couple of the guys you play with, I know you've had, you and Ty used to always have this thing going back and forth with each other all the time. I mean, maybe give the listeners a couple of the stories between you two guys, like, because I know he thought of himself as a real prankster, and I think he still does. So just kind of,
yeah, you would never cross Ty. He would go to all ends of the earth to get you back. There's no amount of money. There's no distance you can travel. There's no hiding spot for you. He was like he was on the ice. He was as big a bulldog prankster as you could ever get. He was one of the most loyal teammates that I've ever met. He would be he would have your back in every situation, anytime, any place. And it's good to know that. I recall one game, there was a player in New Jersey I was standing talking to. I wasn't playing, and I just wished him a Merry Christmas. You know, a beautiful year. Here we go, and hope your family's doing good. Merry Christmas. Ty at that point thought he was yapping at the bench, jumped over and knocked him out. And the game ended, and I said to Ty, he wished us a Merry Christmas. Well, I don't care. He shouldn't talk to you on the bench anyways. Okay, so there we go. Thanks for that. But yeah, Ty and I, we have a great relationship to this day. You know, he's as loyal as you're ever going to get. But in the dressing room, it was easy, you know, grabbing those strings and playing with Pinocchio and just working them every day in front of the group. He was falling for it all. Yeah.
I keep looking at you, and I've known you for a number of years, but, you know, you do bear a striking resemblance at some point. I'm sure you've been told you look like Robin Williams, especially playing in LA at some point. Like, anybody ever confronted you on that?
And you could probably do that golf joke that he does very, very well now.
But we were on my honeymoon in Bermuda, and you know, I thought time to get away. You know, getting out of New York, season's over. We got married, and I can sense this guy in Bermuda from New York looking at me in the buffet line, staring at me, and comes to me and says, "I love you, man. I watch you all the time." And he had his thick New York accent. You know, you on TV all the time, and I can't get enough of you. I love you, man. Can I get an autograph? I'm like, sure, yeah, no problem. So he comes over. I said, what's your name? So-and-so. Glen Healy, give it to him. He goes, you're not Robin Williams. I never fucking said I was. Okay? And again, he walked away. So, yeah, it's been said a couple times, but no, not quite as funny as Robin. He was a lot better looking, but I'll take the compliment. So. And I've had a really great time with you guys as well.
Could you do the spiel on the golf that he did, though, as good as him? I bet you could with your accent.
I have to give up my day job. I don't know if I do that. So.
Our guest today is someone you played against throughout most of your career. He played 13 years, was one of those accommodating guys who'd play any way you chose. One of only 9 players over 3,000 penalty minutes. That's 50 games, by the way, for those keeping score. Won a Stanley Cup with Montreal in 86, named to Team USA for the 1987 Canada Cup, and was chosen for the 91 All-Star Game. And along with a speaker now, spending his time, he has his own show, Off the Cuff, with Chris Nilan. He has lots of players on, does what we kind of do, only probably a little higher level. And speaks, again, very seriously about some of his addiction issues and is a real spokesman for that, much like yourself, Squid. We welcome to the show, Chris Nilan. We're very fond of nicknames on this show. Now, you have one of the best, Knuckles. I mean, it's got an obvious tone to it. Maybe explain who gave it to you and how'd you get it.
A friend of mine, Jerry Dwyer. Now, how I met Jerry, I was in college, and Jerry was on the JV team, and I was on the varsity team. And one day after practice, I went up to sit in the stands because I had a couple of friends playing a college game after our practice. They were playing at Boston State College. And this kid come up, he was in the stands, he was sitting there, and he come up and sat down. I struck up a conversation with him, blah, blah, blah. He told me he's from Rhode Island, and I'm on the JV team at Northeastern. We became very good friends. Now, you know how hockey isn't like school, you know, JV and varsity guy. You don't hang around with them JV guys. It'd be like NHLers hanging around with AHLers. So, but I became very good friends with him. And Jerry made the team the following year, and he, you know, I was still fighting off the ice. You know, you can't fight in college hockey, but I was still fighting off the ice. I broke my hand in a fight off the ice. I ended up getting in another fight off the ice where I got my finger almost bit off I fought 3 guys, and one of them bit me so bad I almost cut my finger off, but I ended up in the hospital with a massive infection, and I was in there for about 2 weeks. Anyway, when I came back, Jerry gave me the nickname Knuckles, and it stuck all the way through from college to my NHL days until my days here as a grandfather. The year I got drafted, I stayed in school another year. I wanted to leave. My dad said, come on, I'd stay in school, don't leave. What are your chances of making the Canadians? Look at them, 3 Stanley Cups in a row, going for their 4th. So I went with a buddy of mine, Franny Flaherty. We went in to see the Bruins practice and the Canadians practice the morning of, I think it was game 4 that year, Too Many Men in the Ice year. And we went and watched the practice, and we're in there. And Franny said, why don't you ask them, somebody there with the team, if we can get tickets, we'll go to Montreal and watch game 5. So I'm there, yeah, well, he said, come on, go ahead. So I go in, and I see Claude Rell. I didn't know who he was. I just knew he was with the team. He had an overcoat on. I went up, short little fat guy, one eye. He's standing against the wall, kind of bouncing back and forth on his feet. And I went up to him. I said, hey, sir, I know you're with the team. I said, I've been drafted by you guys. I'm wondering if I could get a couple tickets next game in Montreal. He said, oh, I don't do this. This man over here. And it was Irving Grumman's son, the general manager, Howard. He was a road secretary. So I go to Howard. I say, hey, listen, Howard, I'm drafted by you guys. I'd love to go to the next game in Montreal. And he said, what's your name? I said, my name's Chris Nilan. I play at Northeastern University here in Boston. He got out the goddamn yearbook, and he flipped through the back pages, and he went through, and he saw my name. And he said, oh, okay, yeah, I'll leave you a couple tickets, blah, blah, blah. Great, I'm excited as all hell. We leave we watched the practice, and we hung around for a while, and we jump in the car, and Franny had a big old 78 T-Bird, and we looked like a couple of wise guys from Boston, a couple of Irish guys looking to rob a bank, or someone. Anyway, we come around the corner at the Garden, there's Lafleur, Lemaire, and Lupien. And Franny says, why don't we see if they want to ride? We'll give them a ride to the hotel. So Franny pulls up, say, you guys want to ride the hotel? And they look at each other, and they go, you know, boom, sure. They jump in the back of the T-Bird. I'm in the front seat, and we're talking. Franny's here, yeah, we're going up the next game. We're going tonight, blah, blah, blah. You know, Lafleur said, you mind if I light up a cigarette? No, no problem, have a butt. They all got Stanley Cup rings on. So I, cocky young bastard I was, I said, listen, hey, you guys, I said, I'm going to be with you guys. I'm going to be playing with you next year, right? And Lemaire says, really? You're going to be playing with us? How are you going to do that? I said, well, I was drafted by you guys this year. He said, where you play? I said, I play at Northeastern right here. I was drafted by you guys. He goes, what round were you drafted in? I said 19th. Well, the 3 of them near pissed themselves laughing. I just figured, you know, I got drafted, big deal. So what if you're drafted in the 1st or the 19th? What's that mean? I just didn't have a clue. And they were laughing. I'm okay. I said, I'll see you guys next year. Anyway, we drop them off. I get to training camp the next year. Oh, no. We go up to the game, the next game. We get there. I go to the ticket window and said, can I have tickets for Chris Nilan? Sure, that'll be $320 something. I mean, what? I had to pay for the goddamn tickets, which I couldn't believe. I was in shock. And anyway, so we end up paying for them. Franny threw them on his credit card. And then I show up to camp the next year. And sure enough, I'm in the locker room. And, you know, where they break you up in 4 teams, right, Rick? And you play the round robin, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I'm sitting there. LaFleur's on my team. And I'm tighten my skates. And he keeps looking over at me, He sees me. Finally, he says, hey, it's you. You're the kid from Boston. He said, you said you were going to be here. I said, I told you I was going to be here. There's no word of a lie. I go out on the ice. We play the game. Who's against? I'm out in the face-off. And Big Gianlupian's there. He's looking at me. And I'm, oh, no, I'm in a fight already. I just got here. I'm going to get a fight already. And he's looking at me. He says, hey, Tabarnak. He said, it's you, the kid from Boston. You said you were going to be here. I said, I told you I was going to be here.
January 27th, 1988. Let's get back to talking a little bit about where you were traveling to. Now, you were moved to the New York Rangers. I mean, the hockey gods are probably thinking of all places to get traded to. First off, Montreal drafts your arch rival. And then the second probably worst place to go would be for rivalry for Bostonians would be New York. And there you're off to the Rangers. How did that all take place that day?
That almost broke me. No, I never, once I came to Canadian, like I told you, I'm extremely loyal to family, friends, and certainly my hockey team, my teammates. And that, I was devastated when that happened. I don't know how guys do it. I just don't. Everybody says, oh, it's part of the game. It's the business. Oh, yeah? Up your ass with that one, with me, because I never wanted to play with another team once I came to Canadians and once I established myself here. I made a deal with myself early on that I was never going to let a coach tell me or even make the inference that I should go out there and fight. Now, listen, I know coaches, they're going to put me on the ice in situations, stuff like that. I had a coach, Jacques Lemaire, who took me out of those situations. Mm-hmm. So there's a respect thing there going on with me. Well, I'll respect you, you respect me. You're going to disrespect me? Well, see you later. And I had that happen with the coach here at the time, Jean Perron. He went around the room in Hartford. We were going through a tough time, losing some games. And Jean went around the room to everybody. He came to me and he said, Chris Nilan, when is the last time you had a fight? And I said, what do you know about fighting? You wouldn't be able to stick up for your mother if someone grabbed a pocketbook. I give it to him. And anyway, he wasn't happy with that. I did it in front of everybody. And I remember going back, played that night, and then went to Buffalo, and Jacques Leperrier. Well, I went to practice that morning. I had a different jersey on. I wasn't with my line for the first time, Gainey and Nilan, Gainey and Carbonell. And I went back to the hotel, had lunch. I just knew something was coming. I was having a hard time. Anyway, I got back to the room, and Jacques Leperrier called me, assistant coach. He said, hey, knock. I said, what's up, Lappy? He said, listen, the coach, he want to talk with you down his room. I said, hey, Lappy, listen, you know I love you. I respect you. I said, if the fucking coach wants to talk to me, tell him to get on the phone and call me himself. I hung up, and 2 minutes later, he called me. And he said, Chris, yeah, what's up? He goes, can you come down to the room? I want to talk with you about your ice time. So I'm like, okay. I walked down the room. The door's wide open. And I walk in. I said, so what's up? He said, Serge is on the phone. And I was like, oh, my heart dropped, you know. And I got on with Serge, and he said, big boy, I'm going to trade you. And I said, where'd you trade me to? And he said, St. Louis. I said, Serge, I don't want to go to St. Louis. I don't even want to leave the Canadians, but I ain't going to St. Louis. He said, well, where do you want to go? And I said, I'd like to go to Boston. He said, I can't do that. And I knew Phil kind of always liked me, always talked to me when I was down there, say hi and bye and friendly. And New York was close to Boston, my family and stuff. So I said, listen, can I go to the Rangers? And he had already traded me to St. Louis. He said, let me call you back. And he did. Now, Big Serge, I talked to him afterwards, and I love Serge. And Serge, Pat Burns was in the minors at the time. And Serge told me, he said, oh, I didn't think Pat was ready. It was either you or the coach. And, I just didn't think Pat was ready. Although Pat was ready 2 months later. Hello? So don't bullshit me, Serge. But I put Serge in a bad spot. The way I look at it now, and I did. I wish he would have chose me over that. Because honestly, Jean Perron, he got a Stanley Cup as a coach, but he was a meathead. And he just didn't understand the game. He couldn't. It was crazy. But anyway, I put that behind me with him. But he is a meathead, and he. Anyway, I ended up going there to New York, and I was devastated. Honestly, it almost broke me. I didn't allow it to, though. The one thing that saved me was that I stayed true to myself. I always said I was going to never let someone do that to me. And that was my only saving grace. And the fact that I went on and, I did my job. I stuck up for my teammates. I was always there for my teammates. They needed me in New York. There's no question. Playing in the Patrick division at Philadelphia, used to push them around all the time. And then I went on to Boston. But like I said, it almost broke me. It didn't. And, it just wasn't the same. I always found myself kind of measuring everything to the Canadians because everything was done first class. It was the best. I loved it. It's all I knew as a pro. So it was hard for me to ever move on from that.
Or also is that guy, that's trying to make a name for himself by coming after somebody like yourself. Did you ever kind of give them that opportunity just to get themselves better with their coach, say?
Well, Linsman was always that yappy little yappy. And like, I like Kenny. I met him after hockey. He's an awesome guy. I get along great with him. But Kenny was one of them. Gary Risling was a real yippy yapper. Yeah. I couldn't stand Rizza. But he was a funny bastard when it's all said and done. Paul Baxter, another one. I threw a puck off his head one game, split him wide open in the penalty box. He stuck me in the eye with his stick, cut me. I tried to fight him. He turtled on me, got in the box. He said, I'm going to give you it in the other eye now. I said, oh, yeah. And I looked down, the pucks were there next to Claude Mouton, frozen. I picked the puck up. I stood up and I fired it right off the head. 10 stitches. Then I went after him while I was getting stitched by Dr. Mulder. You ever see Paul Baxter ask him the story? You will laugh your ass off. Anyway, just funny. Those guys, those pests like that.
Who gave you the best chirp of all those guys?
Linsman was a chirp. Flurry a little bit, right? Mouthy little feel. Hey, where's your bucket? What bucket? It's the one you need to carry the puck in. Just stupid stuff.
Just a little bit about, from your personal side again, you did have a connection through family to a pretty famous Bostonian who was not really a law-abiding citizen through marriage. And he was a hockey fan and a good fan of yours and used to come to some games in Montreal and Whitey Bulger.
Yeah.
How did that all develop? Well, it was through relations through your wife.
Yeah, just through marriage, and I had a relationship with him. Some people over the course of the years talking about that, or people bring it up. I usually, sometimes I don't like going there because people seem to have something wrong with it. Here's the deal. I married into that. I understood what he did for a living. I did not take part in any of that. He was always good with me. It's not like I condone what he did, you know, and he ultimately paid the price not long ago at the age of 90 years old in a wheelchair. He got beaten to death in prison. And, you know, I remember my ex-wife asking me, you know, is it wrong that I feel bad that, you know, for someone who caused so much pain and misery in other people's lives, that I feel bad for what happened to them? I said, no, it's not, because it wasn't all pain and misery in your life. You had a different relationship with that person that other people didn't. And, you know, people can stand back and sit in judgment. I don't sit in judgment of people. Do your thing. You know, I never like sitting in judgment of anybody to begin with. Sit back and pick other people apart. Screw that. I don't have a problem with it. I don't have a problem with saying that I had a relationship with him, and he was always good to me. I visited him after he got arrested in California. Spent a half hour with him, and yeah, he paid the price.
Hey, he was a hockey fan.
Yeah,
he could be a hockey fan.
Yeah, he was a Canadiens fan.
And he was a fan. So now there is a story that when he was arrested, one of the surprise things was they found a ring, which apparently was yours. Is that true?
No. I had 2 Stanley Cup rings. I only won the cup once. I gave my father my ring.
Yep.
When I won the cup, and after Serge traded me, he brought me in one summer. The summer after, I was doing my golf tournament for the Children's Hospital. And he called me in and sat down, and he had another ring for me because he knew he gave mine to my dad, and he felt guilty for trading me. No. So those are the 2 rings. I have one of them, and my father has since, who's still alive, gave the other ring to my son. Jim had enough money to go, and I call him Jim. Jim had enough money to buy everybody a ring.
Now we want to bring you our interview with Auston Matthews from a couple months ago, just during the lockout period, and just listen to what the young man has to say. So how's things go? How's the weather down here today, by the way?
It's a little warm. I'm not sure it's too appealing to really anybody, but it's getting into those months of the summertime where it's 105 every day, all day. So not much to do outside, for the majority of the day, I guess.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things we want to, of course, one of the things we want to talk about is, here, is this probably been the longest time you've been off skates since you've been a kid, like playing any kind of competitive hockey?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I think from like my first year to like my third, fourth year, like the off seasons, I've taken more and more time off of skating, but obviously this is a bit of a different situation. So definitely the most time off I think I've had, just not skating and just kind of unwinding.
So how's the training going?
It's good. I mean, it's been a bit different than your, I guess, average off season, but been making the most of it and doing everything I can to stay in shape and just be ready.
Now you've got a built-in road hockey goalie living with you. So
yeah.
Is there any matches going on in the driveway?
No, I lucked out having him here. Just somebody to shoot on and just kind of I guess go through this with. Whether it was shooting pucks, shooting hoops, just nice to kind of have somebody with you, right? Just to kind of pass the time.
So here's one of the questions. I mean, get back to the training. Just for got a lot of young viewers out there watching today. Take us through one of your workouts, like what you would do throughout the day as a training session.
I mean, I've kind of done some different stuff, here. I think I'm starting to kind of get away from like heavy weightlifting, I think, and just trying to kind of get my body just kind of feeling good and just kind of moving as well as I can. Cause I mean, I'm pretty big and pretty strong, but I want to, kind of be able to move like some of these smaller guys are able to move. So just kind of been trying some different stuff and hopefully it kind of works out.
Yeah. So have you been able to get on the ice at all in your quarantine period or down isolated?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I have been to get on the ice. I'm lucky. So, been kind of trying to keep everything, shake the rust off and kind of stay in shape and just kind of, get your timing and everything back. But obviously it's nothing like, competitive NHL practice, right? So just
Yeah.
trying to stay in that kind of motion and stuff. So when I am back, I can adjust quickly.
The next thing now, psychologically, you're sitting at home and you're training, but nothing is like being at the rink or in your own real gym at the rink. Did you have to motivate yourself a little more to push yourself to stay training as hard as you do?
Yeah, a little bit. I think, I don't think there's really any extra motivation. Obviously, we're hoping that we can come back and play, and there's obviously a Stanley Cup up for grabs. So, I think that's as much motivation as you need right there.
Well, actually, I was going to say to you, now, as Freddie's landlord, who designate the chores around the house? You?
No, I think it's a joint. Kind of production. I think everybody just kind of pitches in and does their part. But he's one of my closest friends on the team, and obviously he's like family to me. So I didn't hesitate to kind of invite him down here and stay with me. And I mean, he was nice enough to get me this really, really nice expensive coffee machine to kind of say thank you for letting him stay here. So it was very nice of him. He didn't need to do that.
Well, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. So I think so here's a couple of things here. I mean, Rick, if he can join us in here, we're going to get to him at some point. When you played in the North American World Cup for the North American team in World Cup as a rookie, did that how much impact that have on you, or take some of that anxiety you might have had as a rookie with high expectations coming into the Toronto camp?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of one of those things. I didn't really know what to expect, right? Like I'd never. I'd play at some high levels. I played in the World Championships against NHL guys. In the Swiss League, you're playing against some ex-NHL veterans. So I didn't really know what to expect kind of going into it. Obviously, a lot of talented guys on the team. So I knew for myself, I was, starting off kind of as that 13th forward. So I kind of needed to earn my role and earn my position on the team. And I was lucky enough to have guys around me that I've known in the past or played with in the past to kind of help me adjust. But I think that was nice to kind of have that experience prior to my first NHL camp, just to I think psychologically just knowing that I can play and that I belong out here with some of the best players in the league, and obviously competing at a pretty high level in that tournament.
Yeah, I mean, and you could see it. And I mean, I think the other thing too is a lot of you guys were all roughly the same age, all within a couple of years of each other. So I think that bonding amongst all of you must have gone a long way too, especially when you're away from the rink and because you're all basically in the same boat.
No, it absolutely did. And I think, the biggest moments that we had, I think of, you want to call bonding, was, definitely came outside of the rink, and, just dinners and stuff like that, and having a couple beers together and just kind of talking and just kind of bonding. So I think that stuff's super important. And like you said, we're all around the same age, all kind of going through I guess similar things, as far as our careers and how they're just kind of starting. So it was definitely an amazing experience.
Which leads me to the next part that we're going to ask is Patrick Marleau. Now there's a veteran who's been around, Hall of Famer to be for sure. And there's a guy that became a big brother to you and a number of the younger guys. I mean, we knew it seems like he was such a great guy. What was it about him that made this attraction and this bond with you and the other guys?
That's a good question. I mean, honestly, he's just such a selfless person. Anything, he's just the guy that's always going to be there for you, no matter what the situation is or the scenario. And I think that's kind of something that, a lot of us kind of learned from him, and just, how he engages with each individual, with each teammate, staff member. I mean, he's the ultimate professional. So, those 2 years that I had with him were special ones. And even though we're not playing together anymore, I mean, he's a guy that he's a friend for life. So I'm really fortunate that I got the opportunity to play with him, and then obviously create that bond.
Yeah, and I mean, you could see that almost filter throughout that club, because as I suspect, just the way you guys all liked each other.
Yeah,
I mean, you could see the way you can tell when guys play together whether they actually like each other or not, and that's not always the case in professional sports.
Yeah, I think it's different for everyone, and I mean, I've been lucky in my 4 seasons in Toronto. I mean, we've had great great teams, great guys. Sometimes you can have a bad egg, and that can kind of put a bit of a damper on the team. But I mean, in my 4 years, it's just been all great guys. Whether they're still in Toronto or not, they're guys that you're gonna have relationships with and friendships with for life. So I feel really fortunate for that, and obviously, Patty's one of those guys.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I mean, okay, so you were approaching. We want to appease the hockey gods and not throw any jinxes at it, but you were approaching that magical number with a 5 in front of it. And now, was there a point in time when you actually thought that was possible to reach that? I mean, obviously when you got to 47, but before that. And I only say that because now Rick, if he'll join us here at some point, when Rick was he was 22, by the way, when he scored we both scored 50 for the first time as a Maple Leaf. He said when he got to be at 45 goals, he realized never before had a Toronto player scored 50.
Yeah.
He didn't even know at the point. So what was your thoughts on all of that coming in?
I mean, to be honest, I just try to kind of keep my mind off it for the most part. But I think in the back of my head, I mean, I know what I'm capable of, and the expectations and the goals that I set for myself I think are higher than anybody else's are going to be. So, I mean, I think it's always in the back of your head, especially when you're kind of creeping up towards that number. And it's unfortunate I wasn't able to obviously complete that goal, and obviously with some games left. But I mean, I think everything happens for a reason, and I'm sure I'm hopeful to get another crack at it.
Well, I think you will. I'm a bit of a bet man the odd time, so I'm betting that you'll get another shot to do that. I'm sure, Austin.
Thank you.
Now, I think that one of the things that I'd ask you is when I followed the Leafs for every game last year and documented, I used to always check the warm-ups for you guys. And one of the things, well, let me set you up like this before I say that. Do you have any pregame rituals or any sort of pre-practice rituals that you do because every hockey player's got something they do that just every day they do this. We're all creatures of habits when it comes to the game.
Yeah, I do a lot of kind of like funky stuff, but I think it's just, I guess, your routine that you're going through, and it just feels right. So for myself, I mean, I like to get to the rink pretty early. I'm usually one of the first guys there, and I don't like to really be rushed. So whether it's a practice or a game, and I like to have a little bit of a snack, and then just kind of get into my whole routine, tape my stick, just kind of get everything aligned, get my my in-game drinks kind of going, like a BioSteel or something like that, and get some treatment, stretch, kind of do all these stretches in my warm-up all in the same order every time, and then I get dressed. I put on the left, like my left shin pad first, my left sock, left skate, weird stuff. And then for some reason, when I get to like my elbow, I always put my right elbow pad on first, and then I don't know, just like weird stuff, right? That I don't know. I guess when you think about it, it sounds crazy, but it's just kind of one of those psychological things. And then I say a prayer before I head out to warm-ups, and then it's kind of just game mode from there on.
Well, one of the things I noticed, and it did stand out after a while following you guys, after going 89 games. I mean, I did notice after a while in the warm-ups, you and Mitch were always last guys to leave the ice. And it caught me a few games to catch it, but I would notice that every game then I started looking for it, that you would put a puck in the red dot of the face-off circle on the shooting end, and you'd be on one knee, you'd take a few shots, but then you guys were always the last guys to leave the ice, and you'd flip a few pucks around and make a few dazzling passes, and then toss a few pucks to the kids. I actually made some good graces with kids I'd see the kids with the signs, and I tell them they were trying to get a puck. I'd tell them where you would go because you guys threw them almost invariably at the same spot all the time. But what started that end of the pregame skate ritual?
I mean, it's good that you're reminding me of this stuff because a lot of it I've already forgotten. So once we get back to playing, I'm going to need you to maybe send me this interview so I can go back and make sure I'm doing all my crazy stuff. But yeah, I usually I come and meet Freddie kind of probably halfway through warm-ups, and then he goes in the net, and I put a puck there that I end up shooting probably a couple minutes later. But I don't really know what started it. I've always kind of liked being the last guy off in warm-ups, and I think my first year McCulloch was the guy that liked to be the last one off. So obviously I respected him, veteran guy. And let him do his thing. And then obviously once he was no longer with us, I was always kind of last guy. So, and then I think just, it's cool. I think our warm-ups, we tend to fill up the stands quite well. And there's a lot of kids that, come down with signs and stuff like that. So, I don't really see a problem kind of taking 5 seconds out of your warm-up to toss a kid a puck and kind of make his day. So I think that's what the game's all about. And I don't think it's something that myself or Mitchie are going to stop doing.
Well, I'm sure you saw it, but I saw a couple smiles on the faces when they'd run after me and follow me after and show me the pucks. And it's worth it. Believe me, you're putting big smiles in some pretty big kids' faces. So,
yeah, of course.
I know you're probably on the run and you're pretty busy. So one more question here, just for some of the people out there. Now, the dressing room, we touched on that before. Well, I was going to ask you PlayStation. Maybe this would be a double question. Who's the best Xbox PlayStation player in the team? And who's the biggest clown?
I'd say the best Xbox or PlayStation player would probably have to be Mitch Marner or Zach Hyman. Hyman started his own gaming company, so he takes it pretty seriously. He's pretty dialed in. And then the biggest clown, I don't want to say clown, but
no,
for
jokester.
sure,
The
jokester for sure is Justin Hall. He's got quite the sense of humor. Just a nice guy to be around. Always makes a laugh. So I'd have to go with him. Awesome guy.
Well, that's awesome. Well, listen, Austin, I can't thank you enough for doing this. I can't believe Squid missed it all, but I don't know what happened to him. He probably pushed exit by mistake. But,
yeah, who knows? I was looking forward to talking to Rick.
Well, what we're going to do, though, is when we do that day event eventually happens, we're not going to, again, remember the hockey guys we're watching?
Yeah.
We're going to get you back on the podcast if we can, and we'll have a little chat with them about it.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, Squid, there you go. That's part 3. As I said, some real characters, some great stories there. By the way, folks, if you would go to any of our iPod sites and you can find the full version of all those stories, but some great ones and some real characters, wasn't there this year, hey, Squid?
A lot of good characters, a lot of funny guys, and a lot of great guys too. I mean, I think if anybody listens to all those, they understand that hockey players are pretty funny and pretty good guys.
They are.
And they're normal human beings that like to have fun and are able to play hockey at a very high level. But these guys were all fantastic on the air.
And very humble.
Yeah.
Very humble guys.
Yeah.
There's no bravado and banging their chests and all that. Always, if anything, to defer. And I mean, there's a guy, look at like Brad May from a couple shows ago. He didn't want to talk about his Stanley Cup because he had so much respect for you that he didn't want to, felt like he was rubbing it in your face. Yet you wanted to hear the stories.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. I mean, just because I didn't win it doesn't mean that I can't be happy for other people that won it and enjoy the stories that I hear about, the parade or the cup going missing or whatever they did. I know a lot crazier things in the old days than current, but still a lot of good stories.
Well, God, if I won a Stanley Cup, I think I'd be marching up and down like the subway every day and standing on the corner of Bloor and Young going, yes, me, Stanley Cup, look. I don't think I could ever give it up. My goodness. I mean, yeah, and you told him, never mind that. I want to hear the stories. But yeah. JR, of course, he's one of a kind. And we'll certainly get him back again. But folks, anyway, we're as I said, we're excited to get going. Next week, we'll be dropping our first one of the new year. Next week, Saturday, week today, actually. And we've got some surprise guests for you guys coming up. Well, I hope everybody got through the New Year's okay. Hope we can get this COVID behind us and all that kind of stuff. And looking forward to get going started again. So, Squid, looking forward to get started on Thursday.
I can't wait. And can't wait. Very shortly, we're going to see pucks flying all over the place. And I'm looking forward to that. Well, we are already, but I mean, the real thing and the NHL
the big guys.
I'm talking about.
The big boys.
The big boys. And so excited about the all Canadian division. I think it's going to be, and you know what? I think that people are going to love it so much. I think it's going to help the league so much that I believe maybe that might be something that they might keep going forward. I certainly hope so.
Yes.
Geographically, it's probably not the best, and it doesn't set up the other divisions geographically that well for travel purposes. Yeah. But the excitement I think it's going to bring is going to be incredible. And of course, at the end of it all, only one of those 7 Canadian teams are going to make it to the semifinals. So that's kind of nice too. That 6 of them are going to be gone. There's only going to be one left come semifinals. And
we hope it's the right one. Okay. So
yeah.
We'll leave it at that. If you need any hints, just look behind Rick. That'll give you a bit of an idea who we're talking about. Okay. So anyway, folks, you can listen to our show on all the podcast networks. I understand from our producer, we're going to be on iTunes or Apple pretty soon, within the next couple of days. So we're on iTunes. I think that's Apple. We're on the podcast Bean, Podbean. Go to our YouTube page, Squid and the Ultimate Leafs Fan. Look up Rick Vaive on Instagram or on Twitter, the Ultimate Leaf Fan. We're all over the place. All you got to do is punch that in. You can find us and listen to some of those episodes while you're waiting for a new one to drop. But anyway, folks, great talking to you guys again. Great new year coming up. Hopefully all things turn around for us all. And we'll talk to you soon.